Rose sat on the cast iron bench by the stone wall. From here she could see Daniel. He was picking the weeds that had sprung up since last Saturday. Getting rid of the weeds was always the first thing he did. Then he'd cut the grass, taking extra care around the tombstones and their surrounding treasures. Every Saturday Rose watched him. She would sit on the bench or wander around the graves, all the while staring. If he knew of her admiration, he didn't let it show. Last week, despite knowing better, she had summoned all her courage and walked over to him. When she was feet away, he looked up and saw the crowd of mourners who had entered through the large black gate, and he went away. Rose whispered a hello, but by then he was well out of earshot. Rose had spent days stewing on the scene, wondering if she should have shouted her hello or maybe greeted him before he left. But it was useless. Even if she went over to him now and screamed, he wouldn't be able to see her. She knew of a way he could, or at least knew of a person who might be able to help. The woman, old Marie, lived in the forest beyond the graveyard. Rose had never visited her, but she knew how to get to old Marie. All she had to do was follow the remains of the cobblestone path. When it ended, she'd find old Marie's hut. Rose brushed her hands on her long skirt. There was no denying it. She'd have to go if she wanted Daniel to love her in return. It was not long before midday when Rose started off on her journey. When she came to the hut, it was creeping close to dusk. Rose didn't even get a chance to knock on the wooden door when it opened and a woman with white, matted hair and long, sharp teeth appeared. Only matters of the heart would cause such desperation. Isn't that right? Old Marie grabbed Rose's hand and turned it skyward. She had a snake-like tongue that flitted from her mouth and licked her dry lips. The heart it is. Still holding onto Rose's hand, old Marie dragged her into the hut and led her to a table piled with bits of everything. Rose saw in a quick, curious sweep of her eyes teeth, string, clumps of hair and something that looked suspiciously like a finger in a jar. Now, you want him to be yours. Old Marie searched among the rubble on the table until she found a heart made from bits of twigs. All you have to do is entwine some of his hair in the heart and then bury it in the shade of a tall tree. On the next rainfall, he'll be yours and yours forever. Rose went to take the heart, but old Marie hid it behind her back. You want this then, do you? Rose nodded. All I require is a foot of your hair, old Marie said. Rose turned around so old Marie could cut it. With her hair shorter and the heart in her hand, Rose left the hut and walked home through the moonlit forest. She didn't rush. There was no need, not when it would be another week before she would see him again. The following Saturday, Daniel was back. It was a warm day and he left his jumper in the storage shed while he mowed the grass. His hair was brown and curly and she'd no trouble finding loose strands of it on the fabric. After Rose had entwined the hair around the twigs, she ventured back to the forest. She already knew which tree she'd choose. On her few ventures into the forest, she always marvelled at its size. Rose dug a hole and offered the heart to the earth. After the burial, the clouds darkened overhead. When she returned to the graveyard, the rain started. Daniel had just finished his weekly tasks. He grabbed his things from the shed and went to his car in the graveyard's car park. The rain already pouring when he entered the car turned torrential. Daniel switched on the wipers as fast as they could go, but the world outside was still a blur. Even if he could have seen Rose, he never would have been able to see her watching him from the shelter of the mausoleum. Not with so many barriers dividing them. From here, Rose watched him reverse and drive away. From here, she heard the crash moments later. Only then did she leave the graveyard and walk out onto the road. The car was in smithereens. Daniel stood next to it, looking confused. Hello, Rose said. Daniel saw her. Hello, he said back. As they stood staring at each other, the rain cleared. Several people in the nearby pub ran over to the crash site. All were oblivious to Rose and Daniel standing in the middle of the road. Some even ran straight through them,